Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. It is our Week 14 preview. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined by Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorchak. If you're joining us, it means you survived the Steelers Patriots Thursday. Gosh, I can't talk at all. Thursday night football game, and you're here to actually talk about some good football games. For all we know, the greatest football game ever unfolded on Thursday night. But yeah, we didn't know what we were going to quote Vamp about. Take people behind the curtains a little bit. A vamping is sometimes just when you shoot the breeze, as it's known off the top of the show. When I say the quintessential Thursday night team, who is it? And the answer can't be the Jaguars or Titans.
No, dude, that literally was my answer.
Because everyone knows that. I mean, who's the quintessential Thursday night team that's not the Titans or Jags? Who comes to mind?
The Browns?
I was going to say like Colts maybe, but I think I'm just sticking with AFC South.
The Browns and Colts have done too much suffering on just normal Sundays.
Also true, yeah.
The Texans were the third that came to mind to me, to be honest.
AFC, just keep naming the AFC South and you'll hit
Exactly.
the third team.
You go through every AFC South. Oh, obviously, it's the Nashville. Nashville has a team.
I mean, in recent years, it's become the Bears, maybe.
No, the Bears, because they're too famous. The Bears, unlike the Titans and Jaguars, get Sunday night and Monday night games. And they're the class like, why are the Bears on Monday Night Football for the fourth straight week, scoring exactly 9 points for the fourth straight week? Where like the Titans and Jags, they own Thursday. They were never allowed on Sunday Night Football, never allowed on Monday Night Football. I think that's why they're so synonymous. Like the Bears, the New York Giants, they're going to be on Sunday Night Football because, spoiler alert, they get ratings. And Titans.
Is that
I was going to say. I looked it up. Apparently, the Lions have the most Thursday night games, but that has to be Thanksgiving. They get a +1 every year, right? So I wonder who else. Dallas is another +1. Bears are up there. Yeah, it's all those teams. Cardinals have played a lot, and the Giants have played a lot, apparently.
They used to play. It's all skewed by Thanksgiving. And, they're only supposed to technically play one Thursday night game a year.
How did the Jags play 4 a year for a decade then?
The answer besides Jags and Titans is actually pretty obvious, I think. It's the Bengals. I have indelible memories of Andy Dalton. I
almost said that.
37 passes and had 94 yards. And they beat the Raiders.
Right.
What the hell?
AJ Green had 29 yards with a 71% target share.
Yeah. That's exactly. So
I feel like the Bengals have played the Ravens for some good primetime games, probably some on Thursday night in the past few years.
They do stick them in there. Yeah, well, the Bengals now are amazing on Thursday. Hopefully you're not referring to the recent Bengals-Ravens primetime game where Joe Burrow got hurt. Mark Andrews got hurt. Kyle, guess who Kyle didn't have on his fantasy team? He's saying injuries are cool.
My opponent's downfalls. Oh, they played a pretty fun game that past Thursday. No, that is not true. As someone who drafted a ton of Jamar Chase and a ton of Mark Andrews, we didn't like those injuries. Not at all.
That was tough.
You make me sick. And so did Steelers Patriots, I'm assuming. Although I got to be honest, I lived for this bad Thursday night game.
Yeah, it's such an ugly game.
What I live for. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this, I had some really fire tweets on X. But we are moving on to actual football games that matter. The Kansas City Chiefs and Buffalo Bills meet for what is seemingly the 1,000th time in the past 4 seasons. See, they've had a lot of good games since the year 2020. The Chiefs are getting 1.5 points at home despite their ongoing struggles, Kyle. We know they desperately need a second weapon in the passing game, and they finally seem to be trying to make it happen with Rashee Rice, or at least that's how it looks to the eye test and the box scores. This is actually borne out in the underlying data. Yeah,
it doesn't matter. I mean, he's clearly their number 2 pass catching option. I was going to say number 2 receiver. He's clearly the number 1 receiver in terms of usage. 1, because he's like the only good receiver they have. But 2, like you said, the underlying data bears out that he is the top receiver and the number 2 pass catching option. But he still hasn't crossed a 70% route threshold. And 70% is not some, it's 3 players a year get to 70%. It's not saying like CMC has 90% of the snaps. You don't hold everyone to that standard. 70% is just what an average wide receiver 1 on a team is getting, and they're still not getting him quite there. The good news is that he was really close to that arbitrary threshold I just made up, and his 2 best games in terms of highest usage, both in terms of routes and target share, have come in the past 2 games. He's clearly trending up. He's also getting more first read targets. They're also designing more screens for him, so it's not like they're just throwing him out there for more routes, but not actually trying to get him more involved. He's both out there more, and they're doing more with him when he's out there, which is good. He's just not up to a full-time wide receiver 1 alpha status kind of share. but he's the number one receiver for Patrick Mahomes, and he's an actual number one receiver for Patrick Mahomes who is not bad. So yeah, I'm totally firing up as like a wide receiver 3+.
And I just don't know why it would not continue trending in that direction, because we joked all year, not really joked. The Chiefs are just kind of in Golden State Warriors mode, like whatever, man, just get us to the playoffs. We're trying to figure out a receiver rotation. They've seriously just almost been rotating 6 receivers all season, but it's now December. They're now in the midst of their biggest offensive slump ever under Patrick Mahomes. It would stand to reason they're actually going to start shaking this out with the most important games coming up. And I would just be very, very surprised if the Rashee Rice genie goes back in the bottle, and that fantasy managers can count on increased usage for Rashee Rice in the fantasy playoffs. But hopefully that is not coping or wish casting or any of the like.
You'll never stop coping.
No, I will never, ever stop coping, to be honest. Calvin Ridley, if you're listening, I'm going to keep coping until you actually do something. Denny, we're talking about the Chiefs' offensive slump. Stefon Diggs is in a very weird, kind of prolonged individual slump for the Bills. Seems like he hasn't had 100 yards since before Halloween. I don't know if he has before Halloween. What are his odds of breaking this slump? And slump is still, relatively speaking, when it's Steph Diggs, it's not like he's posting 30 or 40 yards.
Right.
He's not hitting 100. He's not scoring as much. Can he break this slump? And what is an unfortunately very tough matchup for the Chiefs?
Well, I thought there was no way to know when the last time Stefon Diggs had 100 yards, but it was actually week 6 against the Giants. He had 100 on the dot. That was actually part of being over 100 yards in 5 of 6 games to start the season, and then the slump started. So his average depth of target has dropped precipitously. Said that word.
You did. You nailed it, actually.
Nailed it, buddy.
I would have never in a million years. You know, if I tried to say that on the podcast, we would talk about it for 20 minutes. Like,
well, but now we're talking about it for 20 minutes.
Where did Pat find 2 X's in the word precipitous? 2.
That's fun. So it went from north of 15. His ADOT was north of 15 for the first half of the season. His recent ADOTs are 6, 4.2, and 8. So they are trying to kind of jam him the ball in the intermediate areas, which is good. We like to see that. I don't particularly love when my wide receiver one is dependent on, like downfield shots constantly. So let's get Diggs into this PPR scammy type role. It's a bad matchup, but I think that Diggs should be okay. The matchup is terrible because the Chiefs have the third best EPA against the pass, fourth best again in success rate against the pass. Unfortunately, like we've talked about many times, like the Kansas City defense is not a pushover, especially against the pass. I actually think that the Bills could kind of lean on the run here, and I think that this is a pretty decent spot for James Cook because of that.
Danny, you just got into the numbers for why Steph Diggs could or could not break a slump. You know why I know he's going to break his slump? He's back on twitter.com and he's tweeting. Does this qualify as a receiver tweet? What he tweeted last night? I don't tweet much these days, ellipses, but I hope you all are well. Does that qualify as a receiver? It's elliptical. It's cryptic. The meaning is very unclear.
That's like borderline a retired wide receiver tweet. Like that's like a receiver tweet who's well past his prime. Like he's trying to capture the enemies. Softly.
Well, there are no exclamation points in this tweet.
Yeah.
So is this a receiver tweet, Denny?
I'd have to discuss it with the interns. I actually think that it does not qualify as a receiver tweet because it is cryptic. Well, it is cryptic. It lacks some umph. There's no real umph to it. It feels like he wanted to post just to post, and as a poster, I know how that feels.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a defeated tweet. This might be bad.
Right.
This slump might be deepening. So Kyle, if his slump deepens, hopefully Khalil Shakir or Gabe Davis at least go off. Gabe Davis has had some famous big games against the Kansas City Chiefs. What are the odds that the Bills' ancillary wide receivers go off against the Chiefs?
I mean, I'm waiting on the injury report, and ultimately they have to choose to activate Dawson Knox on Saturday, but he's practicing in full after being activated. And we saw basically the receiver. Yeah, we saw basically the receiver 3 was not a relevant part of the offense until they basically moved completely away from, quote, 11.5 personnel. And they did that not out of their own volition, but it was because they lost Dawson Knox to an injury. If he's back this week, I think they'll go back to that, some version of that. Maybe they are out there having Dawson Knox block more and they're still using Dalton Kincaid as like a near wide receiver 1 alongside Stefon Diggs. But either way, he's getting snaps. There's no doubt that he's getting snaps when he comes back. And those come directly off Khalil Shakir's plate. So we're kind of in a holding pattern until we get that news. But Shakir's also been running insatiably hot on a very small amount of volume, whereas Gabe Davis is more spiky, but at least the volume is somewhat consistent over a large sample, whereas Shakir's, I mean, it's consistent in that it's really not there. So I'm always going to be leaning Gabe over Shakir, whether or not Knox is there. But like you can give it one game, but we might be cutting Shakir in a week if Knox comes back and plays 45% of snaps.
Oh, that's very, very sad to hear, but good for Dawson Knox. He's coming out. They need his presence in the red zone. I don't know why he was so uninvolved or why they can't get production out of him. The Bills have that problem with a lot of players. I don't know how they can't get more production out of Dawson Knox.
I will say that secondary receivers have had more success than the number 1 receivers against Kansas City this year. Josh Palmer, 133 yards. Jacoby Myers, 79 yards and a touchdown. Devontae Smith, 6 catches for 99 yards. So it could be, could be a situation where we don't get the Diggs game. We get a Davis and or Shakir game.
Denny, by the way, mentioned it could be a run game for the Bills. James Cook not only survived his benching, he is thriving under new offensive coordinator Joe Brady. He's reached 20 touches for the first time all year, and he's done it in back-to-back games. He's kind of quietly, safely crept back into the top 20, even when bye weeks are functionally over. Only 2 teams on bye this week. So I think James Cook is back live again in the top 20. We'll be back live right after this. This holiday season, get the fantasy fan in your life, the exclusive Rotoworld Draft Guide bundle featuring expert analytics, player insights, and season-long tools. Get all 3 of the guides for one low price. Go to NBCSports.com/holiday bundle and use promo code HOLIDAY23 at checkout to receive 25% off and a $10 Fanatics gift card. Producer Adam, is that Holiday 23 or Holiday 2023, by the way? I think it's Holiday 23.
23.
Holiday 23. I said it right. We don't have to redo the promo.
All right.
We can move on to Falcons at Bucs. The Falcons have at long last committed to Bijan Robinson, Denny, but he's coming off a poor performance, heading into a tough matchup with the Bucs. How do we like Bijan's odds on the road in this one?
Yeah, we are still calling him Bijan, by the way.
Yeah. Are we the only people doing this? Did anyone else even get this memo?
Oh, the announcers on Falcons games got the memo.
Right.
I can report that with full confidence. So, okay, yes, they have sort of committed to Bijan.
The frustration is setting in.
Okay.
They keep saying it.
We're looking for my God, and because Tyler Algier is getting fewer and fewer, a smaller and smaller percentage of the pie here. This matchup is not so bad. The Falcons actually ran wild on the Bucs when these two teams played back on Bijan's headache game, his migraine game. They went for over 150 yards on the ground. Cordarrelle Patterson got by. Algier got by. Also, the Bucs are a pass funnel, and I've mentioned that in the funnel defense report a few times. But they're also it's weird because they're a pass funnel that's been bad against the run recently, and that's due to injuries. Last week, Chuba Hubbard had a really nice game, and the Panthers established the hell out of it against Tampa last week. They were 13% under their expected pass rate, and so if the Bucs don't get healthier going into this game, I think Arthur Smith is going to just run it like with no regard for human life.
Yeah, Bucs are getting Levante David back for this game. He returned to a full practice on Wednesday, but they then maybe not have Vita Vea. He wasn't at practice because of a toe thing. So just a lot of moving parts of like this defense really has been banged up at cornerback, at linebacker, now at defensive tackle. That's it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we were waiting for you to continue.
And so I did get some questions this week. Am I starting Drake London against the pass funnel Bucs? Yes, usually if Drake London were on a normal team, but this is a very abnormal team. And so Drake London's still going to have to do it on 5 targets. That's what I would say.
Kyle, you did not intone finality on your point. You usually do. And so
I figured we had it mostly covered. I was just reading the injury report, really. I was just running off some numbers.
We just sat here in stunned silence. By the way, Denny's God currently stranded at O'Hare International Airport. His luggage is in Seattle. He will not be making it to Tampa, Florida in time to stop Bijan Robinson from handling 20-plus carries. Kyle, Denny was just kind of laying the land on this, but can any Falcons pass catcher get home in this game? Even though we know it's a pass funnel, We know that they're struggling to run, that they have injuries. Drake London, just back in hell, man. 1 catch for like 8 yards last week. Just totally pathetic stuff from Arthur Smith. But can any of these pass catchers get home? These are extremely good. They're certified good players, and they can't produce because of the way Arthur Smith runs this offense.
I mean, he laid it out. Look, we know who gets the ball in this offense. Drake London is the only receiver we care about. And Kyle Pitts got back to doing the thing he did in the first half of the season in week 13, in that he played all the snaps. I think he set a season high in route rate, or maybe a season high -1 game, nearly season high in air yard share, and I believe a season high in target share as well, basically playing a de facto wide receiver role. He got over 100 air yards. It was incredible. All the numbers that underlie fantasy production looked great. And he went 5 for 40 something, no touchdowns, obviously. Cool 9 whole PPR points. But that's the Falcons experience. I mean, you play the guys because we know they're talented, and we know when they pass the ball, especially after seeing Pitts return to his, like, what I would say is optimal role last week. We know they're talented. We know they throw to 2 guys, and that's it. Sometimes they throw 10 times, and it doesn't matter. That's the gamble if you want to.
Falcons 33% neutral pass rate since week 10. 33%. That's the first time since the 1922 Chicago Cardinals.
For a second, I was like, this sounded so real that I wanted to believe it. That just sounded way too real not to believe. And
I still believe it.
That neutral pass rate, none of our gods can be found.
No.
That neutral pass rate. Is there anything new under the sun, by the way, with the Bucs offense, other than Chris Godwin's wife tweeting about his target share and being?
I had that in my notes.
Oh, yeah.
Denny brought it to my attention. Kyle, it sounds like it was already on your radar. Anything new here?
Yeah, that was the new thing. That was the entirety of the new thing. Is Chris Godwin, his wife tweeted something about, like, why aren't they getting my husband the ball more? Understandable. And Todd Bowles said, like, not in response to this, he said to a reporter, obviously, like, oh, the reason Godwin I don't think he had any targets. He certainly didn't have any catches. It was because we were subbing him out a lot. And then did he not know that we have Pro Football Reference? Because they didn't sub him out at all. He played, like, all the snaps. So I have no clue if he was just unaware, like maybe there are parts of the receiver rotation that he just doesn't have game-to-game control over, or he's just lying. Either way, odd.
It makes me wonder. Sometimes I hear these head coaches talk after a game, and I'm like, are you plugged into this team at all? Like, do you just show up and just like walk around the sidelines with a headphone that's not actually plugged in? I mean, he was like, I don't know. Chris was hurt. He probably didn't play. And here's the thing: as a fantasy football analyst, I knew that wasn't true. I knew our own Zach Kruger tweeted, said, "No, Todd, Mr. Bowles, your guy Godwin led the team in pass routes. Okay, man. He played all the snaps. Like, there's no reason to say that unless you literally don't know." And I feel like, and it's not just Todd Bowles. I feel like a lot of head coaches just don't really know what's going on. Ron Rivera, literally no idea what's going on.
Urban Meyer learned 3 Jaguars players' names the entire
time. And one of them was the kicker. One of them.
And one of them was the kicker, just so we could taunt him.
Yeah.
We did more than taunt the kicker.
No clue who he was coaching. It's truly like hard to grasp from the outside, because you think these guys are obsessed, right? They're just like, nothing. They think about nothing but their players and how to scheme them and everything. But a lot of them, they don't know. They don't know. It's amazing. I do want to say real quick, K. Dotton, he's running a lot of routes. He's getting cardio. We respect him for that. He's staying in shape. 30 routes last week, 0 targets. But Falcons allow the 3rd most tight end receptions on the season. They've given up 21 tight end catches over the past 2 weeks. So, K. Dotton, you could do worse than K. Dotton.
You could do worse. That is K. Dotton's life motto bumper sticker. The slumping Lions and stabilizing Bears rematch, with the Lions getting only 3.5 points on the road. Kyle, how do we expect things to shake out in the Lions' backfield after last week's David Montgomery recommitment?
Yeah, Demont out-carried specifically Jahmyr Gibbs 18-8. As you said, fully reclaimed the backfield for one game. But I will say the Lions went up 21-0 in the first quarter and were up 24-7 at halftime. The Saints eventually made it a game, but even part of their making it a game was losing their quarterback. So understandable to give the really good between the tackles grinder all the carries in that game. Surprisingly, like you said, only 3.5 point spread, partially because the Lions are on the road. As long as it's a reasonably close game, I expect the carry split to not be 18-8. I still think David Montgomery out carries Jahmyr Gibbs, but I think when it comes to touches, which factors in catches, much more valuable than the average carry, they're near 50-50 split in most normal game scripts, and 3.5 spread is a normal game script. So I'm still ranking Jahmyr Gibbs ahead. I will say last week probably made me close the gap a little more in my rankings.
I mean, the reason it's only 3.5 points, Denny, is the Lions defense has just been struggling so mightily and seemingly getting worse instead of better every week. They're almost becoming a defense to target in fantasy football. Does that include Justin Fields? I mean, if you roster Justin Fields, you're probably starting him this week regardless. But is this a Justin Fields eruption spot, or is this maybe like a get-right spot for the Lions?
I think it could be an eruption. I think, a close look at the matchup and just how bad the Lions have been in the secondary. Also not really putting a lot of pressure on the passer. It does feel like a big spot for Justin Fields. Hopefully, and this is the thing that we can never really hang our hat on. Okay, you can try to hang your hat on it, but your hat might end up on the floor. Is that Justin Fields? We don't know about the design rushing attempts every week, right? Sometimes you're going to get 8 or 10, and that's awesome. And sometimes you're going to get 2 or 4, and that's not so awesome. And that means that he has to really rip one off in order to establish that really solid fantasy floor. So if he can get the higher end of the design rushes here, I really very bullish on Justin Fields and DJ Moore.
To make it extra confusing, Kyle,
have been pretty solid in recent weeks. Go ahead.
We'll say to make it even more confusing, Justin Fields didn't have a great fantasy day against the Bears a few weeks ago, but he did have over 100 yards rushing. So I just feel like it's hard to know what to expect from here. Sorry, Kyle, about the designed rushes and Justin Fields.
Yeah, start of the season, dreadful. They did this last year too. They spend half the season, 5 to 6 weeks, having no idea how to use what is use your eyes 3 times on a Sunday, and you'll realize probably the most athletic quarterback on the field on any given week. But then they have a come to Jesus moment where they realize, oh, it's very obvious this guy should be designed carries 5+ every single game. And over his past few weeks, we've seen more. Maybe, probably not still enough, frankly. But the last time he faced Detroit, 12 designed carries. So I think they're working in the right direction, though you'd still love it to be more consistent.
Yeah, he did. You're right. I actually, PFF has him charted for 14 design, but who knows? That's hard to say. But yeah, lots. Let's just say lots. So you're starting him, and you're feeling pretty good.
He was so close to a giga mega game against the Lions.
Yes.
3 weeks ago. Yeah, Justin, we're counting on you this week. So all I can say about that. Any opinions on the Bears backfield? Deontay Foreman is back from his ankle injury. Roshan Johnson was somehow the lead back when last we saw this team in week 12. Khalil Herbert is still there. Any of these guys startable as you try to nail down your playoff spot in the final week of the regular season.
I mean, Kyle, you want to go first? Go ahead.
No, I mean, like you said, Roshan Johnson was the guy. He got over a 70% snap share, right around half the carries, which was the bulk of the carries because Justin Fields always accounts for a lot of the carries, and over half the routes. So that's really good. Do I have any faith in that sticking? No. We've seen them change up the look of their backfield week in, week out, and we've barely seen this combination of 3 running backs active at all this year. So, I mean, I guess if you make me put my money on it, I'll go Roshan because he's the one we saw get the work most recently, but that carries so little weight on this team.
Also, Lions are a very pronounced pass funnel for several reasons. They're pretty good against the run. So you take that plus the possibly 3-way backfield split. I'm just not interested in any of these. I know that people are in a position to have to start them. I guess if I had to choose one, I'd choose Foreman.
It's tough not to go Foreman. I would maybe just, since we're operating in the dark, and maybe go with Kyle and just say Roshan since he had the lead the last time we saw him. Maybe they're in evaluation mode.
Yeah.
He hasn't looked good this year, I'll say.
No, his metrics are awful.
They're all outside the top 30. They're all kind of in the desperation flex mix, and they could all go 0.0 if you put them in your lineup. Just player beware. The Eagles are in their 5th straight game of the century as 3.5-point underdogs in Dallas. Denny. Philly won its first 3 games of the year before getting blown out by San Francisco last weekend. Can the offense get back on track versus the Cowboys defense that just got exposed by Geno Smith? And as we talked about on Galaxy Brains, it certainly seems like they want to establish it. And I don't know if that's going to work.
Yeah, for the folks who missed it, Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, after losing, as Pat pointed out, 1 game, said, we have to get back to the run. There's no excuse for us not running the ball down 27 points in the second half. And the excuse would be that they were trying to score points. So that there is actually
that's not a good enough excuse. All right,
and
look for a better one.
And no one scores points when they run the ball. So I think we could see kind of like an artificial kind of maybe early bump for DeAndre Swift here. And then, Swift is a little bit banged up. So just keep an eye on his practice status headed into the weekend. Kenny Gainwell obviously would be the RB1, probably split, or, maybe split it with Boston Scott. Who knows how these Eagles work. But the way to attack this Dallas defense is through the air. And we saw that last week. It's a very hit or miss type defense. That's what happens when you have a guy who either gives up a 70-yard touchdown or takes a 70-yard touchdown the other way on every play. So, I do think that the Eagles should lean on the run here. Lean on the pass. And I think it should be a really good spot for Devontae Smith and for AJ Brown.
Yeah, Deron Bland became Trevon Diggs so subtly that
I was going to say it's crazy because I literally was thinking of Trevon Diggs when Denny said that. I was like, Denny, Trevon Diggs hasn't played in long. He's not playing the rest of the year. And I was like, oh yeah, they had a clone of him just waiting.
Right. That's right.
I guess props to Dan Quinn, who can make anyone the most volatile, like larger Marcus Peters in the NFL, because they're basically building the entire plan out of Marcus Peters. It's either going to be 92-yard DK Metcalf Tutter or 78-yard pick six. Like, how's their 14-yard difference? Like, don't worry about it, son. and none of that math makes any sense at all. But we hear they need to rely on the pass, Kyle. Dallas Goedert is coming back after missing only 3 games with a broken arm. Seems very, very rushed. What is his return? His effect on Devontae Smith? He only averaged 5 catches for 59 yards. In the 9 games that Dallas Goedert suited up for, he was 7 for 100 in the 3 games that Dallas Goedert missed.
Yeah, his numbers have been, I basically put the same numbers, have been absurd, going from 13 PPR points per game with Goddard to 22 without Dallas Goedert. Gain of 9 points and something like 60 or 70% gain. Those are, I'm going to say, a bit inflated. His role definitely should and has grown since Dallas Goedert. I don't think the splits will be as drastic over a large sample. I also do think it matters for AJ Brown, who's been the only player on the team essentially who's been negatively impacted by the loss of Dallas Goedert. So we're obviously knocking Devonta Smith down to where, like, if you had these types of numbers over a long run, you'd be ranking him as like a top 5 fantasy option. We're probably closer to that borderline wide receiver 1. And now that Goddard's back, he's still a wide receiver 2. This looks like a really good game. And as Denny pointed out, strategically, there's no reason to buy we should establish the run more. I don't even know if I buy that's what they'll do in practice in reality. So Goddard coming back, not great for Devonta. I'm still going to have him as like a top 15, 16 option probably.
I have him like right at 15 or 16.
Nice.
I just wanted to mention real quick, Devonta Smith is in the regression files in the bad place because my man is converting air yards into actual edible yards at an alarming rate. Okay. Yeah. It's off the charts right now. So that can't last.
No one's supposed to actually do that. It's supposed to be air yards, the prairie yards, and leave the real yards to Madden. All right. All right, folks. Leave the prognostication to us. We'll be right back after this. This Sunday night is a huge matchup between MVP candidates and Super Bowl contenders when Jalen Hurts and the Eagles travel to Dallas for a battle with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. And don't forget, find all your favorite NBC sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. And I just realized I should have done the Eagles-Cowboys promo before we talked about Eagles-Cowboys.
I don't think you've ever lined up the promo with
I always forget. Yeah.
Game order.
That would actually be really good, quote, best practices moving forward. We're always looking to get better here at the Rotoworld Football Show. We will be doing that. The fighting Jake Brownings are somehow home favorites against the Colts, Kyle. Just what are the odds we witness a repeat of Browning's Monday night miracle?
7.49%.
All right, let's move on.
All right, that's fine.
It's so funny. I wrote down the riff where I just say the number, and I was like, well, you actually sportsbooks measure this in terms of like he got to 354 yards last week, if I remember correctly, and you can like find alt lines, right? So I pull up his 300 alt line, and converted the odds. I didn't take out the VIG because I'm lazy. It's about 14%. I was like, can I find an alt line at 350? I couldn't find 350, but I found 325, and that was 10%.
Oh,
if you get it to 350, my 7.49 has to have been really close. My riff to like what sportsbooks would say with his actual odds of getting over 350. And if you think about the number, it's a very small number. We're definitely not seeing it again.
Well, I mean, let's talk about like what he did against Jaguars. He was 20% over his expected completion rate. Okay. So his expected completion rate was 70 and he completed 90%. Which means that it was a lot of like intermediate short area throws, obviously, because if the expected rate is that high, but he's not, that's simply not going to happen again. And also the Bengals were very balanced, and I think that we should see that again against the banged up Colts.
I did have one note outside of me congratulating myself on guessing some arbitrary number correctly, is Chase saw all of the receiving work, target share over 30% and over half the air yards. Anytime they wanted to move the sticks, they went to Chase. So even though Jake Browning definitely not throwing for 350, I mean, he's almost certainly not throwing for 300 even, all those yards are going to Chase, which is great unless you drafted anyone else. But at this point, it at least makes the team almost certainly quite predictable.
Yeah, the Bengals admitted T. Higgins is psyop. Yeah, we're sorry about that. We should have been giving Jamar Chase 19 targets every single week. We'll finally do it now that Joe Burrow's injured.
The Colts. Sorry to step all over your joke. The Colts. It was going so well, I should say.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Colts are the second most extreme run funnel. All right, let's move on.
All right, 31 minutes 49 seconds shows off the rails. New record.
Yeah, there we go. Denny, I got to go back to you because you mentioned the Bengals were very balanced in Week 13. Can Joe Mixon and Chase Brown coexist? They pledged to get Chase Brown more involved. They then did so, but they also got Joe Mixon more involved, and he caught all the passes, ran all the routes.
That's right.
Can they coexist?
Yeah, I think they can. I'm actually not too worried. Obviously, I picked up Chase Brown in every league. He's my RB1 now in every format. But with this team being in position to run a little more, definitely way more than when Joe Burrow was under center, I think that Chase Brown can get, 5, 6, 7, 8 carries maybe a game while Mixon sees upwards of 20. And then Mixon ran all the routes, like you said, Pat, on Monday night. And, should be the only guy involved inside the 10. So he has all the touchdown upside there. I'm not worried about Chase Brown too much. Could he rip off like a long touchdown? Sure, because he seems like kind of an explosive runner. The Colts actually do give up a high rate of explosive runs. But I think that Mixon, just based on volume and how this team's going to operate, is a very good play.
Is this 1 point line? Again, the Bengals are somehow the favorites. Is this just the bookmaker saying there's no difference between Gardner Minshew and Jake Browning, which seems a little aggressive to me, even though we know Gardner Minshew is not very good. Seems a little aggressive. The
Colts are not good right now. I mean, the Titans are an abomination of a team, and they barely beat them last week.
This is also at home for Cincy, so that's worth probably
it's true, but
2 point something points. So they're probably saying there's marginally a difference between Jake Browning and Gardner Minshew.
They did just go into the house that Mark Brunell built and won. So the hardest place to win in the NFL, of course, is the stadium with the pool. Everyone knows that.
We saw the pool. We did see the pool.
Kyle, do we get an immediate Zach Moss do-over? He was, as you pointed out several times, the first ever DFS chalk play not to get home in Week 13, but he did have over 20 touches. Can we go back to the RB1 well with Zach Moss? Unless Jonathan Taylor, they haven't officially ruled him out. It doesn't seem like he's going to play.
Yeah, there's no way he's playing. The initial timeline was tepid 2 to 3 weeks, and Zach Moss stepped in and immediately did most of what we wanted, which was saw a ton of work in the red zone. I mean, he saw all of the work the team got. They did not give a carry to another running back on the roster. They gave more carries to Kylan Granson, who got one end around carry or whatever. He gets all the work. They seem like they should be able to put up points against the Cincinnati defense, or at least contend with the Cincinnati defense that, as you pointed out a few times, Pat, is just not cutting it at this point, giving up explosive plays at one of the higher rates in the league. Yeah, we're just running it back with him.
And surely that won't backfire. It won't backfire.
Never. No,
it actually can't.
No. Listen, Zach Moss, regression files cover guy. 99% of his rushing yards, guys, last week was after contact. Contact, I should say. So lots of being hit directly after getting the handoff.
That checks out. I had that game, and eye test confirms.
We are getting the revenge of the chalk this week. Just you wait, folks. The Texans adjust to life without Tank Dell as 3.5-point road favorites for a heinously totaled affair with the Jets, 33.5. Denny, how do we expect this receiver core to look for Houston against an elite defense again as they move on without Tank Dell?
I looked strongly into this matchup, and I don't know. First of all, if CJ Stroud is like a slam dunk starter in 12-team leagues here, it's a really bad matchup, I will say, especially without Tank Dell. Nico Collins, as we said on the Tuesday show, dominated by all measures without Tank Dell in there last week. Just to add another one that I didn't mention on Tuesday, he saw 55% of the first read targets, which is astronomical. Noah Brown led the team in pass routes last week.
Then he got a little choked up saying that one, having added Noah Brown. All of his leagues.
I did. Emotional. I just try. Yeah, it was emotional because I got a goose egg from Noah Brown.
That's called the Calvin Ridley.
For some reason, I'm not getting any points for the pass routes, but he was out there a lot. Okay, and his cardio is off the charts. I want to say Terry McLaurin made that joke last week when he ran 100 routes and was not targeted, and he said, "I got my cardio in." That's what's so funny. That's very funny. Anyway,
just like us.
So Noah Brown is actually in a good spot because the Jets give up the 4th highest target rate to slot receivers. So they are being targeted in the slot a lot. Noah Brown basically runs all his routes from the slot. I think you're starting Nico, obviously, but don't ignore Noah Brown because he gave you a clunker last week.
You made fun of my overly elaborate joke earlier. That stat was about the space shuttle was beginning to break up upon reentry there, and thankfully did make it back into the Earth's lower atmosphere. It was a good stat, to be honest. Can't hate.
It's tough.
Kyle, what's Breece Hall? From bad to worse? Question mark. He got called out by the coaching staff, then had his worst game. Dalvin Cook was more involved. What is going on with this deepening crisis in the Jets' backfield?
Yeah, I wouldn't even quote concerned with his level of play in that game because it's sort of the nature of his game. It's literally what his coach said is like he's a boom bust runner who's always looking for the home run. That's going to result in a bunch of weak, like between the tackles performances, but you're waiting for the blow up. I'm concerned with the Dalvin Cook usage, which he got 9 carries plus 10 total touches, both of which were his highest usage by far since the first 3 weeks of the season. And those were weeks in which Breece Hall was getting up to speed. He didn't obviously seem fully back from the ACL yet. They were easing him in. The fact that we are back to that usage is very concerning. The one quote silver lining is that it was one of his best usage games through the air, Breece Hall's. And that's kind of the one thing we've hung our hat on is through all the boom bust performances, a lot of bust performances on the ground, he gets like 6 to 9 targets every single game, and they're high completion percentage targets. So as long as you're playing PPR or half PPR, you've still got a strong floor. But the fact that Dalvin Cook is back involved in the backfield is it's not great.
No, it's some would say catastrophic. Some would say Pat Crane is refinancing his house.
The bank is brutal.
The bank has been really aggressive this
year. Not even winning $2 million last year could save Crane. Not from the Jets.
Where is Crane's God now? We are searching high and low. Sorry, Denny, were you going to add an actual thought to that?
Nope.
Any actual thoughts on the Jets going back to Zach Wilson? Lol.
I mean,
I had LMAO written down. That was mine.
Denny, do you have ROFL?
I do, yes. But you get a dozen targets for Garrett Wilson. That's what that means.
That is the thing. That is the thing.
I mean, that is the thing, boys.
That's it.
I'm just like by the way, my brain just goes blank every time the Jets off and say, yeah.
So with Tim during the Tim Boyle era, it was Tyler Conklin seeing a ton of targets. But Zach Wilson doesn't do that. Zach Wilson just targets Garrett Wilson wherever he is on the field, and so I think that you can be somewhat less depressed if you drafted Garrett Wilson and you somehow are still in the playoff hunt in your fantasy league. If that's the case, congratulations.
Zach Wilson, no love for the Conk Daddy. And Denny, you know what? This is funny. I just realized something where every week I thought like, oh, is that Garrett Wilson, despite like the horrible quarterback play, still getting 7 catches, 72. Yeah. I'm in last place in that league. I was rationalizing all year. It's not as bad as I thought. And I'm in dead last.
I can't tell you how intense my FOMO was around Garrett Wilson in late August, where I looked at like my best ball exposures and stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't have barely any of Garrett Wilson. And my smartest friends were all like, I only draft Garrett Wilson. Like,
yeah, well, Denny, sometimes the fish get there, so it happens.
And thankfully, guys,
240% target share, 3,000% of the air yards, 99 end zone targets a game. If only the corpse of Rodgers was out there, we'd be destroying everyone. And instead,
no, I mean,
here we are, 12 plays.
If Rodgers plays, even if Rodgers was not even that good,
he didn't have to be good. Exactly.
Yep. Garrett Wilson would be the wide receiver 1 overall.
In that league, Pat's in 12th place, and they added a 13th place spot to it, so I could be in there. And they also put Garrett Wilson on my team.
Wow, things are getting. It's a lot of creative new formats in fantasy.
Yeah.
And yeah, if I were Aaron Rodgers' Achilles, I would have considered not doing that. So I could still have a home. But we digress. The Rams head to the Mid-Atlantic as touchdown underdogs against the Ravens, Kyle. Fantasy managers seem convinced there is a wide gulf between Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham. But what we will presuppose here is, what if there's not? Is there really why is everyone every week of Zay Flowers like 20 spots ahead of Odell Beckham based on I feel like absolutely no evidence? We had a callback touchdown. I don't know if you saw this, guys. He had a touchdown that counted briefly and didn't count.
Get out of here with your call. Oh, we had a callback. Yeah, he had a callback touchdown that's going to cost him like 7 or 8 fantasy spots at the end of the season.
And to be frank, it was a horrible call. But is there a big deal? Is there a big difference between Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham, Kyle?
So you have this in the show sheet, and I'm like, Pat, this idiot giving me dumb idiot questions. Let's like dig into the numbers. I kind of knew what the answer was going to be. Odell's been pretty good this year. He's actually the best receiver on the team in terms of targets per route run, yards per route run, and ESPN's their receiver metrics, their like player tracking metrics.
Open score.
Zay Flowers has. Yeah, well, he's just behind Zay in open score, but he's significantly better in yards after the catch score. So it comes out that Zay's also still pretty good. I think the one biggest difference is that, like I said, targets per route run, Odell, when he's on the field, gets targeted a ton, more so than anyone on the team. His route rates over the past 4 weeks, 3 games, because they're coming off of bye, I believe, are all at or below 50%. He's just not on the field that much. He's relatively old for NFL standards and has been banged up this year. Understandably, they don't seem to want to use him that much. He only has 1 game over a 66% route rate. That was in week 1, very long time ago. I will say, coming out of the bye, as they push towards maybe the number 1 seed, if there was ever a time we see Odell Beckham's role just in terms of being on the field grow more, this would have to be it. So it's something to watch out for. And I think to Pat's point, even when he's not on the field all that much, they love targeting him. So Pat's kind of right in that maybe we shouldn't put such a massive gulf. I'm still going to rank Zay over him, but he's right to point out that we shouldn't treat one like, oh, this dusty old veteran. He's basically Van Jefferson. And then the other guy's like, he's second in yards to Puka Nacua or whatever. They're closer than we give him credit for.
Yeah, Denny, I don't know if you have a thought, but this not trying to make it a bit, but it just Zay Flowers rankings just continually do seem aspirational to me, basically. And that he has been so close, but he just hasn't really gotten there. He has not really been a legit wide receiver 3 in fantasy. It's kind of just people almost putting him in like the wide receiver 2 territory. And I just don't really know what is real and what is fake there. Kyle just did a very good job laying it out, though.
No, right. And Odell is being targeted way further down the field than Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is seeing basically everything at or around the line of scrimmage, whereas Odell's seeing the downfield stuff. So Odell doesn't need a whole lot to get there for fantasy. Zay Flowers kind of does. You would like to see an increased route rate for Beckham, like Kyle said, coming out of the bye. I will just note here, folks, you're not going to believe this, but Lamar Jackson is sick again.
Wait, are you serious?
He missed practice on Thursday. So hopefully
drink kombucha once in your life. It'll change you.
I mean, can we get... Look, I live in Maryland. I live 35 minutes south of Baltimore. I'm going to bring some vitamin C up to Baltimore Ravens
daily
headquarters.
multivitamin.
Can you get your quarterback some vitamin? This guy's sick constantly.
It is crazy. I must say, Colin, of course, same last year. when I was sick from October 14th.
We've got our own Lamar Jackson on
April
this
4th. This year, knock on every piece of wood in existence. That has not been happening.
Yeah, I mean, if you're sick as much as Pat Daugherty, then there's something wrong.
I swear to God, I was the classic. I haven't been sick in 24 years.
Well, then you spent all of 2022 sick.
Well, then I quote had kids once. And
yeah, 5 kids.
I haven't thrown up since 1997. And, then I had kids once.
And then you did it.
Denny, Rams receiver check-in. Cooper Kupp, is he a decoy? Puka Nacua, they're manufacturing touches for in kind of odd fashion, including giving him carries after he had a rib injury. What's going on in the Rams receiver corps?
Yeah, that Puka thing was weird. He was taken off in tears and then returned 15 minutes later.
He was probably just sad that they were taking him to the locker room. He's got that dog in him.
His own coach, this is not a joke, said he thought he was dead. That's what Sean McVay. I'm not kidding. Sean McVay said that.
You know what's funny? I think this was about Puka as well. It was during their Wednesday walkthrough. I think Puka was listed as limited, and McVay's he was out there and did everything. I don't know why they listed him as limited. He was a full participant. And the Rams are like that. They don't McVay never knows his team's depth chart that they list on the site. I don't know. Every team is different. He is not a part of the social media conversation. Whenever they put stuff out on their website, their social, he never knows.
He ain't reading all that. Denny did read all that about the Rams receivers.
Yeah, so here we go. Over the past 2 games, Puka Nacua has a 21.4% target share. That's higher than Kupp at 18.5%. Here's something, guys. Puka has 40% of the air yards over those 2 games, which is high. Cooper Kupp is 4th on the team with 11% of the air yards. So that is concerning, I would say, for Cooper G. Kupp the 4th. Also, I do want to mention that the Rams, they're establishing it. It's not even, they're not even exploring. They're not even run curious anymore. They're just all in on the run. Rams are 3% below their expected dropback rate since Stafford returned from his injury 3 weeks ago. They have a 30% pass rate when leading by more than 1 point over that stretch. Okay. So when they get a lead,
safest lead in the game, 1 point.
When they get a lead, man, they are no longer going to pass the ball. I don't think that'll be an issue here because I do think the Ravens are a horrific matchup for the Rams, and they will be forced to throw. But Puka is the wide receiver 1 right now.
Seems very clear. Very quick, Kyle. Keaton Mitchell check in. Any reason to expect an increase in touches after the Ravens bye week?
I mean, he's never not had an increase in snaps and routes. Literally every game of his career, he's gone up in those numbers. I do think we know he'll hit a ceiling at some point. Ceiling technically is 100. I think he'll probably get to a ceiling before that, given his size and given, say, the success of Gus Edwards. Edwards is also elite at the goal line. He has 12 carries inside the 5. 9 of them have converted for touchdowns. I don't think he's lost yards on any one of them. So that role is clearly off the table. And I still think they're probably capping him somewhere close to a dozen touches, but he's so efficient. He breaks every graph. It's him, Achane, and then just this chasm of white space on your graph until you get to the mass of normal running backs. So I think it makes sense that we've seen them increase his role in basically every game. They get the bye, and he has done nothing to show them they shouldn't keep increasing the role. I would just temper expectations that it gets to him being a 15 carry plus kind of guy.
At long last, Justin Jefferson returns with the Vikings operating as 3-point home favorites against the Raiders' Denny Carter. We have increasing Josh Dobbs skepticism, but can Jefferson be immediately returned to the top 5 of wideout? And if so, what are the knock-on effects for TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison?
I think so. I think that he can be top 5. I know folks are maybe being a little bit hesitant in their rankings, thinking that they're going to ease Jefferson back in. I have been the victim of thinking that guys are going to be eased in when they're just plunged into the offense and take on their absolutely normal every week role. That's kind of what I'm expecting here. I really don't think that they're putting Justin Jefferson on the field unless he is 100% ready to go. So
he hasn't played since week 5 with a hamstring injury. not to be like Mr. Tough Guy, but I'm pretty sure he's probably 100% healthy by now.
It's been
I feel like we've seen a lot of that this year where guys
We've
come back.
seen a lot more than usual.
Guys get designated to return from IR and they spend like the full 3 weeks. They're up to full practices before they get activated. And then as Denny said, they come out and they're ready to go back full go. I mean, we saw it with like even just the single missed games for someone like Devon Achane, missed a game, what was it, 2 weeks ago, and comes back and plays like the entirety of the second half in a blowout over the Commanders. Seems like teams have been more cautious with the time to return, but then using that as a reason to get the player back to full speed immediately.
So just real quick on the Vikings receivers, since Josh Dobbs took over as Minnesota's starter, Jordan Addison has a 43% air yard share, leads by a large margin there, 23.5% target share. He's actually tied with TJ Hawkinson for first read targets over that time. So this hurts. This hurts Addison a lot. This role is gone for him. And, we remember early in the season when Addison would sort of get away with it on deep balls. That's what we're back to, I think, as a profile for Addison. Now, the quarterback is different, and Kirk Cousins was leading the league in on-target pass rate before his injury. Josh Dobbs is near the bottom of the league in that category. So Addison becomes a very kind of sketchy wide receiver 3-4.
Yeah, 3. He's right around wide receiver 40. So the 3-4 borderline. Kyle, is this ever happening for Davante Adams? He's actually averaging 80 yards over the past 3 weeks, but the ceiling just has not been there. The targets floor has been restored. He hasn't had a ceiling with Aiden O'Connell. Reason for optimism, hope against the Vikings.
Yeah, the Vikings are a relatively easy matchup for wide receivers, but specifically at outside wide receivers. They've given up the 5th most fantasy points to boundary wide receivers. Adams, as you expect, plays most of his snaps from the outside. And like you said, the targets have been there. The air yards have been there. He's got a third of the team's targets since Aiden O'Connell retook the lineup and over half of the air yards. Like elite alpha number 1 receiver type stuff. And we just haven't seen the explosion game yet. But I don't think this offense is so dysfunctional that we can't expect sporadic explosion games. Like when I look at someone like Drake London, I say like, great, you can get to 480 and maybe 1. Your team almost is never going to pass enough, especially like throw deep down the field enough for you to get there in a, 152 kind of way. With Aiden O'Connell in center, they're at least throwing enough. I think he's averaging like 31 pass attempts in his 4 most recent starts. They're throwing enough. And often enough specifically to one player that we're going to get a spike week. And actually, looks like for DFS purposes, we probably shouldn't have a lot of ownership on Davante. I don't know if this is the blow-up week. It does have a decent, chance given the Vikings can't really contain outside corners. But in terms of the ownership versus odds of blowing up, I love him this week.
I think Aiden O'Connell's going to have a Jarrett Stidham game at some point too, but where he has like 330 yards and a couple touchdowns. Yeah, he's going to have look it up. The Zoomers don't remember the Jarrett Stidham game.
Zoomers don't remember that thing that happened like week 17 last year or something?
From less than a calendar year ago. Look it up if you don't know. Denny, very quickly, Alexander Mattison, is he still an RB2 coming off the Vikings bye week? Only 2 teams on bye this week.
Yes, and I will say that Josh Dobbs rushing hurts Madison, his penchant for just taking off and running the ball is going to just strip Madison of opportunities. We see this with any rushing quarterback really. So his path to like a solid fantasy day is just getting into the end zone. And I'm not sure we can expect that against a pass funnel Raiders team. I mean, this Raiders pass defense, I think, is like very underrated in how bad it is. Like we're not really giving it credit for just how bad they're not
giving up like big days. It's weird. It's like they're not very talented,
but the success rate they're giving up is high. Also, they're really not getting any pressure on the quarterback especially over the past month. I looked at that and I'm like, Dobbs is going to have all day to operate, and Dobbs has struggled so badly when pressured. So I do think that the Vikings are probably going to try to throw it here. Madison is involved enough in the passing game. I think that you probably can plug him in, I don't know, as a PPR RB2 or flex.
I've got him still in the very low end RB2 ranks, but that's about as high as you're going to get, especially with Justin Jefferson. There's just so many variables in this Vikings offense right now. But we digress. We move on. The unwatchable Los Angeles Chargers host the I couldn't read what I wrote. I wrote the unkillable Denver Broncos because, man, they will not go away. The Chargers are 3-point home favorites only, Kyle. Is it getting to the point where we are having trouble calling Justin Herbert a QB1? Not because of him, but because of his supporting cast woes. Horrible Quentin Johnson drop on 3rd and 12 last week. Horrible Donald Parham drop on 4th and 4. Justin Herbert is doing what he can. He's even avoiding sacks. But there's just no one there to help him right now. Is he still a QB1 in this tough matchup?
Yeah, I don't know. He's on that borderline, whereas to start the season, you would have never said such things. But he had 2 300-yard games with Mike Williams playing in the first 3 games. He's had 1 since then. There have been 9 weeks, probably 8 games, or 10 weeks, probably 8 games since then. It's very clear that as they lose more and more and more players, this offense begins to look like it did last year, which is a lot of checkdowns, which he's still good at. Like you said, he's doing everything he can, avoiding sacks, high completion percentage to his short. Like he's getting the layups he can to Keenan Allen and to some degree Austin Ekeler. But the ceiling just really isn't there without someone who can stretch the field, or in terms of Quentin Johnson, apparently Donald Parham, catch the dang ball.
You ever thought of that, Quentin Johnson?
Watch the language, man. Kids are watching.
I know kids are. My kids are all. You can't see them because they're all very young and small. They're right here.
But they're
They never heard the word "dang" before, and I actually do try to never swear around my kids. Not the dang. I do not consider "dang" a swear.
Which is why when we hang out, I try and swear as much as I can around your kids, just to give them some exposure.
I do know some people like that who make sure that they have heard the quote F word before.
Never
Denny is Austin Ekeler still an RB1? 14 carries, 18 yards against the Patriots. Not getting targets. Keeps fumbling.
Look, I appreciate that Austin Ekeler messes around with us fantasy nerds, and he gives us the time of day.
We're rubbing off on him, though.
And right.
Sorry.
Yes, I mean, right. T-levels affected here. And he seems like an advocate for fantasy football. He plays it himself. He won our boy Karain a bunch of money last year, and we appreciate all that. And he seems like a really great guy. Also,
yeah,
Austin
all the
Ekeler.
things, yeah.
Austin Ekeler is among the worst running backs in the
Man,
NFL.
that was even a more brutal butt than I thought you were going to go with.
I said also, and
it's true, you didn't say butt.
All right, I'm going to read you some stats, folks. Okay, because this is not my opinion. Okay, I've never watched a game. I'm just looking at the numbers. Ekeler is 43rd out of 50 qualifying running backs in yards after contact per rush. Okay. He's 70th out of 75 qualifying running backs in missed tackles forced. He's forced 13 missed tackles this whole year.
What a game, baby.
He has a same explosive rush rate as teammate Josh Kelly, which is 3.2%. It's bad. It's real bad. And then the Chargers today, Thursday, came out and said, we are having a competition in the backfield. Okay.
I missed that.
That's on a website. You can check it out, rotoworld.com.
Never heard of it.
You're gonna love it, Pat. I swear it's right up your alley.
It's supposed to be blurbing on Thursday afternoons. We digress.
It's a good site. I recommend everybody go check it out. Anyway, yeah. So I think that the team has looked at the spreadsheets and they're recognizing what's happening here. Also, Ekeler's not commanding many targets at all.
That's been what's absolutely killing him in fantasy.
Yeah.
I think he's not getting the targets because the Chargers are seeing the same things, that he's not adding on yards after the catch, after first contact, etc. So they're not targeting.
He's not. His yards per route run, I've just bottomed out. I do think that you might have a way to not play him this week. You might be, depending on how you work the waiver wire and stuff. Let's put it this way. If you're like, oh man, I got Zach Moss a couple weeks ago when Jonathan Taylor went down. Do I play Moss over Ekeler? My answer is yes.
Moss over. That's a good example.
The Broncos still allow a ton of running back fantasy points, but I think that's mostly a remnant from the first 4 or 5 games of the season.
From maybe that 70-point game they gave up where they gave up 7 combined touchdowns and 300 yards to 2 running backs on the same team. Might
have had something to do with it. Kyle, you have 20 seconds to tell the people if Russell Wilson is a QB1 streamer this week. He never throws, but now all of a sudden he's running a lot.
I had the running a lot. Producer, start the count. 20 seconds. He's top 10 in both rush attempts, rush yards, and he's on pace for the most rush attempts he's had in a season since 2017. Like you said, he throws a lot of touchdowns. He's like the QB 14, 15, 20 seconds up. Let's go.
Not to take people too behind the curtain, we got a lot of games to do in like the next 20 minutes, by the way. The Seattle Seahawks get a second bite at the 49ers apple after surprisingly hanging with the Cowboys last Thursday evening, Denny. Is there anything transferable from that matchup, or will Seattle get routed by San Francisco for the second time in 3 weeks?
So San Francisco is by far the most extreme pass funnel in the league, okay? And they're really good at defending the pass. So wow. This is just a horrific spot, I think, for Geno. Geno, he played really well against Dallas, against a secondary that has made big plays, like we talked about, has made big plays, has sort of looked the part of a good secondary. But really, when you dug a little bit, not even much, you dug a little bit deep into the Dallas secondary, you said, oh wait, they're actually giving up a lot of big plays. The Niners are not. The Seahawks, I will say, are very pass heavy when trailing. Okay, top 3 rate in the league since week 8. But I don't know how Geno is going to do it. I think that you're just kind of desperate if you're having to play him against the Niners.
That scans to me. And just the other side of the ball, Kyle, outlook good for the 49ers, but can Brandon Ayuk really keep up this wide receiver 1 living on this little volume? I think it's been over 4 games since he's reached 8 targets. He keeps scoring touchdowns, but so often he's getting 5 or 6 targets. We feel like we have no choice but to rank him in the top 12. But is that true? Do we have a choice?
You always have a choice, Pat. You always have a choice. I won't be ranking him in the top 12. I think he's a wide receiver 10 over the past 5 or 6 weeks. Like you said, he's not getting a ton of targets. He has 1 wide receiver 1 game over the past 5 or 6 weeks, but every single one has a touchdown that keeps him at least in the top 26, 28. And when you're always in the top 26, 28, you end up coming out as a wide receiver 1. Right now, he's first in the NFL in yards per target, first in the NFL in yards per catch. And those just aren't that sticky. They produce fantasy points, but they're not that sticky. The good news, on the other hand, is even though his expected fantasy points makes him look like a wide receiver 3, he plays on probably definitely the most efficient offense in football. And he leads the team in air yards, targets, and end zone targets. He's clearly the wide receiver 1. It's just a balanced, kind of slower team. He's still a top 24. He's probably still a top 16 option. Once the touchdowns go away, though, you'll see the volatility take place.
On the final note of this game, we don't really know who the Seahawks lead running back is going to be.
Bo Scarborough.
Bo Scarborough, really? Is he on the team still?
No.
I feel like it's been a while. Ken Walker is practicing. Zach Charbonnet practicing, Kyle?
Do you say Ken Walker is practicing?
I thought Ken Walker and his oblique are practicing. I actually wasn't sure on Zach Charbonnet and his knee.
I believe they were both DNPs yesterday.
Well, mega yikes. Hella mega.
Pat, I'm telling you, there's this website called Rotoworld.
I thought our website said that Ken Walker was practicing. Maybe there was an update later that he wasn't.
I don't know. I just looked at the injury report before we logged on today.
It's giga yikes, though, is what I'm going to go with there. And Deebo Samuel, by the way, eats up the zone defense. The Seahawks play the second most zone in the league. He only had 7 for 79 on Thanksgiving night on NBC. Maybe he was scared because he was on the bright lights of the Peacock network.
No, he does eat up. You're right. He does eat up the zone, and Ayuk eats up the man coverage. And it's a Deebo game. It's another Deebo game.
It's a Deebo game. The Miami Dolphins are getting nearly 2 touchdowns at home against the Titans, Kyle. Is this going to be yet another game where the Dolphins can't reach their full fantasy potential because the other team just doesn't compete?
Yeah, I think that's sort of like the way we talk about garbage time for quarterbacks is probably overblown. All of the fantasy options, Waddle, Hill, Mostert, Achane, Tua, I think that's all of them, all average more points in games they've won by more than 2 possessions, so more than 16 points. They all average significantly more. The running backs absolutely destroy when they win by 16 or 17 plus. So no concerns. I mean, that's how I get that, Tyreek Hill has got a bunch of production and he doesn't even play in the fourth quarter. He doesn't play in the fourth quarter because he destroys the other team through 3 quarters. He would be playing in the fourth quarter if his production wasn't quite as good. So you can see how the lever just moves one way or the other. You're not worried at all. Their best games have all been complete annihilation of their opponents.
On the season, the Dolphins have the 8th highest rush rate while leading by 7 points or more. Okay, so anytime they grab a decent lead, they establish it. Last week against the Commanders, they had a 41% pass rate while leading. And I think we could see a similar thing here. So hopefully Tyreek gets his. Maybe Waddle gets his before things get weird. But it makes Achane and Mostert great plays. Achane has like a horrifying. If you go into Monday night and you're playing against Devon Achane, you better be up by 50 points. That's what I'll say. And if you're up by 30, you cannot.
You've already lost. Don't even turn the game on. You lost.
I'm begging you not to count your eggs until they hatch.
You can count to 0. That's how many eggs you got.
Man, I needed a hammer of the gods game from Tua, and it's not happening.
No, it's not happening. No,
I mean, Tua's played really well when he's destroyed his opponents because he's going to instantly put up 28 in the first half, and he doesn't.
That's all he does, though.
Great.
All he
does is put up 28.
I need legendary games when this happens. I don't just need a really good game. I need a legendary game.
Listen, if you wanted that, so Tua has to be in the perfect spot because if he plays against a good team and he has to play from behind, he's doing nothing. If he plays against a bad team and he can put on 15 fantasy points in the first half, then they just run it for the whole second half. So it needs to be a perfect what's that?
We need the Goldilocks zone.
It's a Goldilocks situation.
We need the Goldilocks zone. Earth is in the Goldilocks zone. You can question whether the universe made the right. All we do is talk about fantasy football. They put Earth right in the Goldilocks zone, and we've evolved to spend all of our lives talking about fantasy football. No other takers.
I mean, right, and you're giving me an existential crisis.
I know that's where I was too. I was like, dang, maybe we should be pushed out of orbit a little bit.
No. We should, man. Yeah, even 1 degree, and we're apparently just screwed, guys.
What about half a degree to scare us? Like just to hey, maybe focus on your meaningful relationships on one Sunday out of the second half of the year once.
Nah, never mind. It's not worth it.
You're right.
Kyle, Nuke and DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry's prospects in this game seem kind of bleak, seem kind of bad.
Yeah, the big dog prospects do not feel great, given that he just doesn't play on passing downs anymore, and it's all Tyjae Spears when they have to throw the ball, and they should get destroyed in this game. So, I mean, you're still playing him, but he falls probably even more into the Ekeler zone of like, there are scenarios in which you do not have to start him. And there are probably more of those scenarios this week. Zach Moss being the perfect example of that. He's a guy, a lot of people, like, you didn't have to draft him, obviously. So you can get an RB1 on your roster who you just picked up. So probably still going to ranked as an RB2 because he's still pretty good and they still want to establish the run. Nuke, on the other hand, is a pretty good spot in terms of this team's actually going to throw a lot. And he just sees every target, all the air yards, all the end zone targets for this team. Miami's opponents still don't get to play a lot, but they pass a lot. So this is a really good Nuke spot as far as any spot can be on this offense.
So scans to me. Hopefully Will Levis the Dolphins defense is kind of percolating.
Yes.
I'm a little scared.
I am too. The Jalen Ramsey edition has made this a not fun team to face for fantasy purposes. I mean, ask Terry McLaurin, who again got some cardio in and did nothing for my fantasy teams.
A giga unfun team to face all of a sudden. The Green Bay Packers are missing Christian Watson, but they're still touchdown favorites in East Rutherford, New Jersey against the Giants, Denny. We've already talked about this earlier in the week, but does Christian Watson's loss temporarily derail the Jordan Love breakout train? And which Packers wide receiver is the post-Christian Watson winner?
Yeah, well, to address the first thing, just to kind of reiterate what we were talking about on Tuesday's show, there's nobody else in this offense that can bring that element, that speed downfield element that Watson brings. Because Watson, although he is very frustrating at times and lots of variance to his game in many ways, including apparently injuries, he's gobbling up the air yards. He is the only game in town when it comes to going downfield. Romeo Doubs is second on the team in air yards, and then basically no one has any after that. So I guess Doubs would figure to benefit if they're going to put him in that role. I would guess that Jaden Reed will probably pick up a lot of slack as a short area target. I think what's going to happen here is that sort of quarterbacking that you wrote about, Pat, eloquently on Monday. That old school quarterbacking from Jordan Love. We're not going to see as much of that going forward. There's going to be more of the safe sort of check down stuff. And hey, you know what? That's going to be good for Reed, and it's going to be good for the tight end Tucker Kraft. I messed his name up once, and 400 people got on me about it, and I haven't been able to come up with it since.
We call that Rotopat's worst nightmare.
Yeah, well, that's why I never mess up a name.
True.
So, you just say it in every possible pronunciation.
I do.
Yeah.
You do every wrong pronunciation, then before doing the right one. That's how you do it. Kyle, on the other side of the ball, is there any hope? By the way, Denny, if we see any of that Jordan Love old school quarterback, it's just going to be more likely to result in picks.
Yeah, right. Oh, and Dontavian Wicks is in play in deeper.
He's live. Yeah, he is live for sure.
Add him in your deep dynasty leagues. He's a good ad.
He is a good ad. Kyle, on the other side of the ball, is there any hope the Giants continue their offensive momentum coming out of their bye week? Jalen Hyatt was kind of doing things before they had their off week. Where are we at? Is it for sure Tommy DeVito or Tyrod Taylor have a chance to start this game?
They said Tommy DeVito is the guy going forward. Taylor healthy or not? For now, at least.
Okay, well,
it's for sure Tommy DeVito. It's fun. I don't know
where can I read that.
So actually, I have this site that I run. Denny helps me run it, called Rotoworld.com, which I believe you are scheduled to contribute to right now. Yet you are on this podcast.
I'm a freelancer for Rotoworld.com. Sorry. Any chance they continue this offensive momentum that Big Tom was shown for the bye week?
Yeah, I mean, he's played better since his first start and a half. He played some snaps in a previous non-start. And two, they're clearly not as terrified of letting him throw as they were in that first two games where they had one of the most insane run rates lowest pass rate over expected, highest run rate over expected you'll ever see. They look at least like a normal functional NFL team now. And he's also earned the right to get to pass more. The only thing that matters to me too much, though, is Jalen Hyatt. And he's the most 100 yards or 0 yards you'll ever see. 25 depth of target, 25 yards downfield. His average target covers a quarter of a USDA grade NFL field. If you he's going to get 5 targets, and his odds of coming down with anything between 30 and 60 yards are 0. And his odds of getting over 100 or 0 are really high. So enjoy your variance, but he's playable.
Wow. Denny will never quote enjoy his variance.
No, I won't. One time someone online many years ago told me to quote, enjoy my fantasy points from Josh Gordon. And you know what? I did. I actually did.
Good for you. Denny enjoyed something. There you go. That's amazing. I was joking. You were never mind. I was going to go off on a tangent that I'm not going to do.
Move on.
No, we don't. The most ghastly game in recent memory features CJ Beathard versus Joe Flacco. Kyle, is there any chance we get that sweet, sweet Flacco volume again against a really, really bad Jaguars pass defense? Is Elijah Moore, let's say, a top 30 wide receiver if Amari Cooper is sidelined with his concussion?
I'm probably going to have him ranked like a top 24 wide receiver. Joe Flacco had more air yards than any other quarterback, not only last week, but depending on your source tracks air yards, I think a lot of sources had him as the most air yards of a single game this year. It was like 530 or 540, depending on who was counting them. Insane volume and attempts to move the sticks from Joe Flacco. And all of that is going to Elijah Moore. His role was already ticking up in recent weeks. Over the past 3 weeks, he's got a 37% target share. But now without Amari Cooper, he's very clearly the team's wide receiver 1. His target share is also up slightly, and his targets per route run are also up slightly over that span. And that span includes games with Amari Cooper and also includes games with the really unfunctional quarterback play they had before that. So yeah, I'm gonna have him as the most fun, frustrating, exciting top 20 receiver this week, I think, or at least top 24.
Oh yeah, no, 250 some air yards last week for Moore. Crazy.
It's gonna be so fun.
Joe Flacco, there's just no chance in hell. I think Joe Flacco said, I'm only coming back if it's 40 balls every game.
Yeah,
and I think the Jaguars pass defense. I had to start the Jaguars defense in a league, and I'm like, I don't really want to do this, but at least they're facing Jake Browning.
It's Jake Browning. You'll be fine.
Next thing, wow, it's the best ever spot start by an NFL quarterback. After I started doing a Mike Breen voice. He's never called an NFL game. And I tried to transition out of it.
There's no way. Listen, the Jags sell out to stop the run. The Browns are not establishing it. They're just not. They're going to have to throw.
They're going to have to throw. Anybody have an opinion on the Browns backfield? Say one they want to share in 20 seconds or less. Do either of you have something on the Browns backfield?
I mean, both are avoids.
Producer Adam wanted to do a timer. If we did a Browns backfield,
put it up on the screen. You mean?
Producer Adam, we're going to do. Denny has 20 seconds of an opinion he really, really wanted to share on the Browns backfield. If you're listening, Adam, we are ready.
All right, let's do it.
Do a timer.
There we go, Denny. 20 seconds. Come on.
All right, Kareem Hunt eating into the workload of Jerome Ford enough so that you can't play either, and no one can run it against the Jags, and the Jags stop the run no matter what. It's a pass funnel defense. There you go.
Wow, there you go. He just got triple Jeopardy there for that. They asked you who the 16th president of the United States was, and you gambled your entire family's life savings on Abraham Lincoln, and now you won Jeopardy. Some of the jokes have not been good today. I'm sorry about that.
the getting the little ticker noise really made it for me.
That really pressured me too, the ticker, even on my joke. Denny, what is the Jags' offensive environment with Mr. CJ Beathard, who very first play last week had the most backup quarterback play I've ever seen, where he just started tripping and fumbling after running like 7 yards. It was quite something.
That was really something. And then it looked like he broke his wrist for a minute. I mean,
he was really shaking that thing out.
I think it's his shoulder, because he popped up on the injury report with a shoulder thing, limited, so he's going to play if they need him to. But like, it probably was immediately got dinged up.
That was a weird situation. All right, so his ADOT in 13 dropbacks, 10 pass attempts last week. His ADOT was 6.2. So we are going to see lots of little checkdowns. I think Evan Ingram just eats here. Okay, like we're gonna get that classic 11 catch, 60 yard, no touchdown Evan Ingram game, and that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that.
It actually is.
Pat, you said you needed 0 points on the dot from Calvin Ridley this week, because it sounds like
I need 0.0 from Calvin. That's what the
Ridley. For. Listen, if Ridley gets a wide receiver screen, he could potentially score negative points for you. You know, if he's tackled.
As you saw, I tweeted about that Monday. Why do they call so many design plays that were the intended outcome is Calvin Ridley getting broken in two?
Right.
I've just never seen anything like this.
Like tiny, like spindly Calvin Ridley. We're going to have him run directly into a 300-pound lineman over and over and over.
Like we want Cal Ridley matched up on Myles Garrett on a screen. I'm like, oh, is this a good idea? I'm not sure. I don't think I know he's a wide receiver and he's a defensive lineman. I don't think he can juke Myles, and he's broken into.
Calvin, are you okay?
And no, thank God the answer was yes. They got him hit so many times Monday night. That was totally insane. But we're moving on to the game of the week. Just kidding. It's the Panthers. The Panthers at the Saints. The Saints are 5-point home favorites against Carolina, even though we don't necessarily know who will be under. Maybe we do know who's under center by now, Denny. Have they said it's officially Jameis Winston? I feel like they've been loath to rule out Derek Carr.
Yeah.
But Jameis Winston, he's not even a fun streamer anymore, is he? And what does it mean for Taysom Hill, so on and so forth, if Jameis is under center?
Well, look, This is tough news to report. Taysom Hill is not practicing this week. And from a personal standpoint, I don't know what I'm going to do if Taysom Hill is out. Like personally, professionally, I don't know. I don't really have politically in all ways. I don't know what I'm going to do if Taysom Hill doesn't play this week, because it's such a good spot. I know we're not talking about Hill. We're talking about Jameis. But yeah, I mean, we can expect Taysom to continue to have that red zone and green zone inside the 10 role as the main quarterback, and that just crushes the fantasy upside of anybody who's under center for New Orleans. Jameis Winston, of course, was really bad last week. Also, the Panthers, like we talked about on Tuesday, not a fun defense. They don't allow anything through the air. They do allow stuff on the ground. Second highest success rate. They allow the second highest success rate against the rush. So I don't think that Winston is a streamer unless you're in like a 16-teamer.
I'll say the only thing I run this little website called Rotoworld.com. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Derek Carr limited in back-to-back practices despite concussion back. Or what is he? Concussion back and something else?
Shoulder
rib
as well.
Yeah. So
no, his ribs. He has 4 things here. Wow.
I think he only has 3, so I might have concussion, rib, shoulder, the back one.
Yeah, there we go. No back. Yeah, you imagine that one. That was the AI, the Grok.
So, but limited back-to-back limited in most situations is a good sign that a player is playing. Yeah. Obviously, concussions are kind of fickle, where you just have to clear that final step of the protocol. But like, I guess I'd probably put him at better than 50-50 to play.
Man, I haven't been reading Zach's blurbs today, but they will do quite literally anything to not have Jameis Winston start.
Yeah.
Like, no, he's fine. Like Derek Carr could like not remember his name. Like, he's fine. I don't know what you're talking about.
Derek Carr, like that hit last week was like a medical emergency, and he's going to play the next week. It's amazing.
I've never seen the Jets were more comfortable letting Zach Wilson throw down the field than the Saints are with Jameis. It's like totally they let his reputation get so in their head. I feel like, where they will not open it up. But they think if he attempts any pass down the field, it's an automatic interception. Like, dude, his worst season, only 30 plays were picks. Like, press your luck a little bit. So many of them. That's a lot, but and take your chances a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're gonna miss 630% of the Jameis Winston dropbacks you don't take. Let him,
amen, brother.
Just let him cook. If he throws a pick, who cares? Because then he might throw a touchdown. But yeah, they live in utter abject fear.
So by the way, if Taysom's out, first of all, rest in peace, me. But Derek Carr, if he starts, becomes a more viable option.
He does. Anything at all to say about the Carolina Panthers? Anything?
Oh, yes.
Go for it.
So here's what they're doing. They're just running out the clock on the season. That's actually, when I looked at the data from last week and how they operated with a lead, without a lead, whatever, they're just trying to get it's like a longer version of a team just being down a ridiculous amount of points in the fourth quarter and just running the clock out. Okay. They're just trying to run the clock out. That should lead to lots of volume for Chuba Hubbard, including goal line stuff. I think they're going to run it pretty much no matter what going forward. Miles Sanders is just a non-entity basically in that backfield. So I think that you can start Hubbard. It's not a good matchup, but I think that just the way the team is operating, just way below expected pass rate, that he's going to just luck into 20 touches.
Adam Thielen fairly well. That one's over, right? Like
it's over.
Godspeed, King.
Like, so they backed. I've made this joke before, but they backed the Ford F-250 over the ATM. The money is just shooting out for like several hours, but all the money has finally shot out of the ATM. There's no bills left to pick up, it seems like, with Adam Thielen and the PPR scam.
No, there's no scam. And the coaching staff that remains has no interest in running a scam.
No, they don't. Yeah, they have no interest. They don't want to be around Charlotte anymore. They know they're going to be fired.
Nice
and they're already.
Come on.
In that athletic report, they said that there were coaches around midseason who were lobbying for Andy Dalton to take over. And really, you know who else lobbied for Andy Dalton to take over? Your co-host, me.
Oh, gosh, yeah, that's a blot on your record. Just to be
frank. It's not. We could have gotten a whole season of Thielen.
That's actually true. I had to trade for Adam Thielen in the league,
and would have been a top 6 PPR receiver.
Man, if the Chiefs had just got Adam Thielen. I think about this all day, every day. All you had to do is get one vaguely reasonable with a pulse veteran wide receiver, and you're easily winning your 3rd Super Bowl. And instead, you did this.
Pretty much it.
I don't know. Anything else to talk about? I think the show's over.
I think it's over.
Yep, feels good.
Feeling a little ragged today. But I
think it's week 14. What do you want?
That's true. We did a good job breaking down week 14. What do you want from me? Where is my God? Now it's right here. Because guess what? Calvin Ridley's gonna go off.
Good
this weekend. So everything's fine.
Pat, who's that pounding on your door?
Well, I thought I had my mic muted. I told them that my kids are napping this time. I told them to stop doing that.
Mr. Potter is once again.
We're gonna enjoy the house the final 2 weeks we have it, Mr. Potter. Come on, you don't have to be such a cartoonishly evil man, Mr. Potter. I know all about you. I really need to end the show. For Kyle Dvorchak, for Denny Carter, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Check out Denny's regression files. Check out his funnel report. Yes. Check out Kyle's start sit-em. Check out his 32 facts. Check out my rankings. Check out back episodes of this podcast. And, of course, check out Denny and his Friday afternoon Q&A at 1 p.m. Eastern on Rotoworld.com. For Kyle, for Denny, I'm Pat. Thank you for listening. We will be back later.